Today I'm bringing you a Strand Hunter build focused on Sever. Why? Because we have a new artifact perk with Act 3 called 2 Shreds, and this generates Woven Mill hotspots for you and your teammates when you killed severed enemies. Now we do have Threaded Spike, which is pretty good severing, and we have Threadlings from the artifact that can also sever now, and we also have a new artifact perk that makes Tangle sever, but I just want to go all in. So I focused on the new Strand weapon perk for this episode, Tear. That is only on a few weapons, and it's only in the third column on a single weapon, and that is Unsworn, the Strand Trace Rifle from Sunder Doctrine. And this thing is awesome. Also, thanks to some artifact perks, it does crazy damage. So we're getting a 50% damage boost on Strand debuffed enemies, which is everything on the field, thanks to the artifact. And then we also get Strand weapon surges when we damage stronger enemies with their abilities, thanks to Foetracer, our Hunter exotic, and what this amounts to is some really strong damage. We mix in a little bit of Suspend here just to make enemies easier to manage and land those crits easier, and it just flows really well. It's extremely strong, pretty versatile, and it can just demolish anything. I'm not even going to break out heavy or my super, despite my super charging very quickly as well, and we're just going to burn this boss down with a trace rifle. That sounds good to you? Let's get into it. I'm Engineer. So just for an overview of the build, my goal with this build is to sever enemies constantly, get Woven Mail, and buff our weapon. General use for this is nightfalls and seasonal missions. It's good for general ad clear and some light boss encounters. Not really for raid or dungeon boss encounters, so it'd probably be okay for that. I've tested this up to 15 power level under. That's usually where I test with legend campaign missions, but you could probably definitely push it a little bit further, especially with all the artifacts support this episode. Now, the pros. You can get plus 97% Strand Trace Rifle damage this episode, which is crazy. You can get plus 31.25% Strand weapon damage for other weapon types pretty consistently. You can reduce enemies' damage output by 68.8%, which is pretty much equivalent to DR as long as you can do it pretty consistently and on the major enemies. You get pretty high Woven Mill uptime, which is another 45% damage reduction for you and your team. You get lots of AoE damage thanks to those Whirling Maelstroms and high super uptime. And I didn't even list it here, but you also have access to Suspend, which is a great crowd control ability and will also counter unstoppable champions. Now on the con side, it's extremely artifact reliant. We are relying on about 5 or 6 artifact perks to make this work, and it also has limited healing, as most Strand builds do, but the damage resistance really covers for that pretty well. Lastly, you want to make use of your tangles as much as possible, so it's kind of annoying when your teammates take your tangles, so try and coordinate with people, but if you're playing with randos, good luck. Let's get into those artifact perks because they are so central to the build. In column 1, we actually do care about one of these, and it is Overload Trace. Overload Trace exhausts enemies innately, and that will reduce their damage output by 25% normally. But with one of our later artifact perks, we can boost that to 35%. Now, over in column 2, we have 2 great Strand perks. We have Unraveling Orbs, which is free unraveling rounds every time you pick up an orb. And you can boost it for 5% more Strand weapon damage on unraveled enemies, which is very good. We also have a great Trace Rifle perk called Be Medic, which gives you healing on rapid Trace Rifle kills, which is just awesome, especially on Strand. It has a little healing. Lastly, we have Vile Weave, which will make your tangles sever, including your Whirling Maelstroms, and it will reduce the tangle cooldown whenever you pick up a tangle. You do have to pick it up, you can't shoot it, so keep that in mind and try and pick them up as much as possible. In column 3, we have Disruptor Spike. That will take the damage reduction from Sever from 40% to 52%, and for Exhaust from 25% to 35%, and those do stack together, so using them both is great. We're also going to take Elemental Siphon because it can make elemental pickups, but the main thing we're here for is the boost, which will give you super energy about 3% whenever you pick up a tangle, which is just free super energy, so can't complain about that. Over in column 4, we're going to take Horde Shuttle. This will make Threadlings when we do weapon damage to unraveled enemies, and then when you boost it, all those Threadlings will also sever, so even more sever on the field. We're also going to take Harsh Refraction, and this is probably one of the most important ones because it gives you 50% more damage to a legendary trace rifle on a Strand debuffed enemy. Over in column 5, we're going to take Elemental Supercharger, which will give us super energy for killing severed or exhausted enemies, and that's all of them. That's every single enemy we fight, so that's pretty great. And then lastly, we take 2 Shreds, which will create those Woven Mail hotspots for you whenever you defeat severed enemies. You can also boost this for a little bit more ability damage, so that's definitely solid too. There's also Limit Break in this column, which does boost super damage by 30% if you have a strand buff, like woven mail in this case, but it only lasts for about 8 seconds, which is about half the duration of Silk Strike, so I don't think it's quite as useful as having more uptime. The weapon I have chosen for this is Unsworn. This is the Strand Trace Rifle from Sunder Doctrine, and the main reason for this is my goal was AoE Sever and damage, and this was the best option I could come up with to do both of those. This is the only weapon with third column tear in the game, so I definitely recommend you farm for something with tear. Unfortunately, in the fourth column, you don't have a lot of great options that work for a build like this. My two picks would be Detonator Beam and Hatchling. I'm using a Hatchling version of the gameplay here because I don't have Detonator Beam yet, but that kind of synergizes because both Tear and Hatchling work best with precision kills, so it kind of trains you to really focus on that. There are other perks like Target Lock and Bait and Switch and Elemental Honing, but all these are boss damage perks and they're really just not ideal for using this for ad clear and general play. Like Target Lock sounds good, but because you have to stay on one enemy, you just tend to lose it too often. One thing to mention here is trace rifles are surprisingly hard to land precision kills with, and I did some research on this and did some tuning and tried out a bunch of different versions of this, and what I came to find is that stability is incredibly important. You want about 95 or higher stability to control that recoil for crits, and if you have a little bit of trouble, you can pulse fire the trigger and just like rapidly fire it, and that can help too to really stay on target. Now the really cool thing about this is it has one of the best origin traits in the game. On common enemies, it has a mini explosive rounds perk, and on stronger enemies, it will exhaust them, which is free 25% less damage, 35% less with Disruptor Spike. We do also get that from Overload Trace, but we will get it faster with this origin trait, so that's just good. And as mentioned earlier, Harsh Refraction is going to boost damage up really crazy, so that's good. Now, you might be asking yourself, why aren't you taking an exotic strand weapon? Actually, the reason for this is the Synergy weapon mod. This is very unique in that it is one of the only sources in the game of tangles that will occur outside the global cooldown of 12 seconds. How this works is you just rack it up as you get kills, and you need 12 weapon kills to spawn a subclass pickup, and then you'll incur a cooldown. But if this triggers while you're within the global cooldown, you will still spawn a tangle despite the global cooldown. But if you trigger this when you're outside global cooldown, it will trigger it. And then this ability also has its own cooldown of 12 seconds where you can't get any progress towards it for 12 seconds. So this isn't going to come up a lot. If you really need to take another weapon mod, that's fine. But this is one of the unique cases where you can actually make a little bit more tangles, and I think it's worth it since we're using this weapon for ad clear. Other things to note too, if you do use Hatchling, Hatchling's honestly pretty good because that Threadling will count as a weapon kill for this, and it can help you get to that 12 count even faster, so that's kind of helpful. Detonator Beam will also do really good because that detonation is all weapon damage, so all the kills from that will progress this. Now, you may not have this, you may not have the dungeon, whatever, so I have other options. If you want other weapons with tear, you also have Unloved from Sunder Doctrine, which is a strand burst hand cannon if you want to use a primary weapon. If you don't have the dungeon, you can get Adamantite, which is from this episode of Heresy. It's a strand sport auto rifle, a little bit harder to land crits on, but it's a solid weapon and pretty versatile. We do have some other exotic options. Separate, I want to mention Tessellation, because this is an exotic fusion rifle that sits in the energy slot, but it takes the energy of whatever grenade you have equipped. So this will let you technically run 3 strand weapons on strand, so that's pretty cool. And it has a lot of great perks to it. Every kill with it gives 20% grenade energy before flat game factors, and you can eat a grenade for a strong rocket blast that will also sever after about a second, as long as you have the catalyst complete. That blast also has built-in chain reaction, so if you fire it into a crowd of enemies, it's going to kill all of them, and you will get a grenade charge back most likely because of that grenade energy per kill. Very good. I'm not running in this build though, just because I don't like running double special personally, but you could do it. You just have to focus on getting those special finishers. You've probably seen a very similar build video to this with either Final Warning or Barodiad, and both are great options. I've made Barodiad videos. I want to mix it up a little bit here and just really go all in on Sever, but both are fantastic weapons, so definitely take those if you feel like it or if you don't have access to some of these other options. Lastly, for a heavy weapon, you want a strand weapon because we're getting free weapon surges and we want to take advantage of that. For linear fusion rifles, your best bet is Scintillation from Nightfalls. It's actually farmable this week, but not for much longer. Your best machine gun is Pro Memoria, that is from the Pale Heart, and it is craftable. And then your best rocket launcher right now is a new one launched this episode, and it's called Cynosure. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but probably not. And that is just from Vanguard. You can focus at this episode for a much discounted cost, so get those resets in with Zavala, and then focus as many as you can to get some good rolls. Let's talk about our exotic briefly. This won't take very long. This is Foetracer. It's a base game exotic. You can obtain it from any source. If you deal ability damage to an elite, mini boss, champion, boss, or guardian, then you get 4 times ability element matching weapon surges. For us, that's strand weapon surges, and you get that for 16 seconds. And it's not refreshable. But because we have so much damage over time in this build, it's pretty easy to re-trigger that as long as the enemy's not dead. And if they're dead, you don't really need the weapon surges. Now the last part is that killing highlighted enemies that you have targeted like this can spawn a subclass matching elemental pickup, which in this case is a tangle. Now this is on the global cooldown. You won't be making extra tangles, which would have been really cool actually for this, but it is nice and it gives you another way to do it, especially if fights drag on just a little bit. But we have a lot of debuffs up. Moving over to our aspects and abilities, our first aspect is Whirling Maelstrom, which is probably the best Strand Hunter aspect. It has 2 fragment slots, and whenever you destroy a tangle in any way, throwing it or shooting it, it creates basically a Beyblade, and they fly around, they spin, and they deal damage to enemies over time, and they really home in on them, and that's great. For our second aspect, I went with Ensnaring Slam. Anyone who's watched my videos knows that I really love Threaded Spectre, but I just didn't have much use for it in this build, and I found that Ensnaring Slam let me really line up those crit shots for Terror and Hatchling, so I get to spend a group of enemies and then just get easy headshots on them, and that's nice. It's also a way to apply verb quickly to create a tangle at the start of a fight, so that's nice. This will slow down your class ability regen speed for 6 seconds, but it's not too bad. I generally don't notice it too much. Now for our abilities, we have Silk Strike by default, really solid roaming super. For our grenade, I'm taking Threadling Grenade for just a little bit more Sever, but this is pretty flexible. This has a 62.5% flat gain factor, so you won't get the most energy on your grenades, but that's fine. If you do go the Tessellation route where you eat your grenades for those rocket blasts, take Grapple Grenade instead, and maybe consider switching Ensnaring Slam to Widow's Silk to get 2 grenade charges, because it's a pretty fun way to build that. For our melee, we have Threaded Spike, once again by default, but this is a great melee that severs enemies and hits a lot of enemies, and it's very solid. It has an 80% flat gain factor. And lastly, we take Gambler's Dodge because we get melee recharge and we don't have to build into strength as much because we can just build into mobility. Moving over to our fragments, these are really straightforward. We take Thread of Generation for more grenade regen. We're dealing a lot of damage in area and over time, and that will just build up grenade energy. We're going to take Thread of Continuity because we are focused on strand debuffs, so we want those to last 50% longer. We're going to take Thread of Rebirth, which will let us generate more Threadlings as we get weapon kills. It will generally take about 3 weapon kills to create a Threadling with common enemies. This on top of Horde Shuttle will let us create a fair amount of Threadlings and also our Threadling Grenade. So we're going to take Thread of Evolution to make those do 33% increased damage and have them move faster. Some alternates to think about because we have Suspend in the build is Thread of Mind, which will give you class ability energy when killing those suspended enemies, and Thread of Wisdom, which will make an orb on suspended enemy kills. Those are both pretty helpful, but I think just focusing on Threadlings with the state of the meta right now is just really strong. Moving our mods and armor stats. Our mod setup is pretty straightforward because we're getting our strand weapon surges from our exotic helmet. We're going to build for orbs and super, heal on orbs, and special strand weapon ammo. So for orbs and super, we have hands-on and ashes to assets. And then for orb generation, we have harmonic siphon, heavy-handed, firepower, and rebirth. Pretty much every source of orbs we can get. Now for ammo, we are going to take a harmonic scavenger on the legs, and then we are going to take a special ammo finisher on the class item. So we're going to make those special ammo bricks give us more ammo, and we're going to be able to finish enemies to generate them as long as we have 3 armor charges. For healing, we'll have recuperation on the legs. And then just for quality of life stuff, we have powerful attraction to pick up orbs when we use our class ability. And then we will also have harmonic loader just to make our reload speeds a little bit faster on these strand weapons. For our stats, we want to max out resilience, get a fairly good amount of discipline, and then get as much recovery and mobility as we can, because we're using that mobility to get our suspending ensnaring slam back and to get our melee back. And then we just want to get intellect to 30, and then we can fully dump strength because we don't need it in this build. But if you have some spare stats, just go for it. So I want to show you a longer gameplay clip. This is the opening of Contest of Elders played solo. It's a kind of arena fight, and it's kind of fun for testing out these builds that are damage and survival focused. This will also just show you how well we can apply Sever to a lot of enemies. Getting used to landing crits with this trace rifle takes a little bit of practice, but it is pretty rewarding once you do, especially once you get those severing blasts and the threadlings popping out at the same time. See, the whirling maelstrom is just doing its work, and then we're going to suspend these enemies so we don't have to deal with them too much. See that severed enemy there. Just picking up orbs periodically, but lowering the damage output of all these enemies is great. Is maybe just a few power level under, not much more than that, so just reducing that extra damage is great. We just pop this, boop, and that's going to take care of that spawn for a good little bit. See, we've already almost got our super back, and that's just thanks to all those artifact perks, and it is a roaming super, which helps. Just trying to get some stronger enemies on the field, so we're going to suspend this elite and just nuke him in the face, and he's gone. Just see green particles pretty much all over the place, and it's really fun. Strand builds are great this episode. I hope they stay great. I hope they buff them so that these artifact perks don't feel as required, because this is the best they've ever felt. And I can see we're getting close to dying here, and it's because we have 2 elites and the boss shooting at us, so we pop our super. Roaming supers typically have about 90% damage resistance, so it's a great get out of damage free card. We wipe out a few groups of enemies, and then we're pretty much back to full health and have all of our abilities recharged for severing. We've got these woven mail hotspots here we can just kind of hang out by, keep refreshing that. And you can see the whirling maelstrom is just pursuing this boss endlessly, and I'm just doing damage to him. Now, bosses are where hatchling kind of falls off because you're not making that many threadlings and it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of a bummer. You can see we suspend the boss, and it doesn't actually suspend them, but for bosses, the suspend tethers will snap and deal a pretty decent chunk of damage. Pretty much out of trace rifle here, so we were just going to finish them off with that scintillation linear fusion. And that's pretty much it. So just to summarize that gameplay loop, you want to ensnaring slam to suspend a group of enemies at the start. That will debuff all of them, and then it will let you finish off an enemy with a precision kill pretty easily, so that terror activates and hatchling activates. And then you want to break the tanglet forms from that first kill and just let it start working through enemies, and it will continue to sever them. Then you use your threadling grenade and threaded spike to spread more sever or finish off those enemies, and then trace rifle everything else. That will exhaust, that will sever, and it's great. Now, as you saw in the clip, use your super for large targets, crowds, or survivability, or all 3 like I did. And that's pretty much it. It's not super complicated. Takes a little bit of practice to manage all the tangles, but it's really good. That's pretty much all I've got for today. As I wrap up, I'm just going to go back to the build review tab so you can see the pros and the cons of this build. I appreciate all the support on the channel. The subscriber growth has been great. I hope you're enjoying these videos. I have had a few people complain about how my voice sounds, and I'm sorry. I'm sick a lot because I have small children, and I'm also tired because I do this as a side thing. But if you ever don't like listening to my voice, you can just mute it, and pretty much everything I say is on these slides, so do that. I try and make the videos as convenient as possible, and that can include not listening to me. Just mute it though, so I do get some YouTube watch time, and the algorithm shows me to other people, because I think I do have good content and a lot of good information. Once again, I appreciate all the support, and I hope you enjoyed the build. With that, I'll let you go. Thanks. Have a good one.